That's all I get?
Hey, that's all I got. I got
You're
three
done.
notes. I just played them all. I'm done.
See you later,
See you
everybody.
later.
Just kidding. We wouldn't do that to you. Hey, thanks for being here, Steve.
No problem.
Cool. So, hey guys, thank you for being here. We're doing a live fretboard workshop. Today we're doing how to combine the major and minor pentatonic scales in a blues solo. And this is a blues tip that you might have heard intuitively, kind of pick it up. You're like, that sounds different, but you're not sure exactly what the guitar player might be doing. This is going to be an eye-opening session for you today. So if you want to learn how to combine the major and minor pentatonic together in a blues solo, keep watching. If you want to learn it even faster, you can go to guitarzoom.com and you can check out Steve's Unlocking the Fretboard Connection course. There should be a link around this video somewhere. You can click that, go to Guitar Zoom, check out Unlocking the Fretboard Connection. It teaches you how to combine all the major and minor pentatonics together into something really cool. So thanks for being here, guys. Hopefully you can hear us okay. If you can, put that in the old chat box. Test 1, 2, 2, 2. I can hear you, Gary.
1, 2.
That was good to me.
Cool.
And guys, if you don't want to miss any of these sessions, make sure you click the old subscribe and notify. You'll get a notification when we do the next session on Fretboard Workshop and all the live sessions that we do. So do that. And what do you got for us today, Professor Steve Stine?
Okay, well, what we're going to talk about in the last session that we did, we talked about major and minor pentatonic and how they sound different and how you can go back and forth between them. So I thought what I would do is expand on that a little bit today by showing you how you actually use them together at the same
Very
time.
cool.
And this, again, was really huge for me because when I first learned about major and minor pentatonic, and I'm using blues as our template, but you can use this in any style of music you want. You know, it can be done in country music, modern country music. It can be done in rock music, you know, anything that has a blues influence, really.
Sure. Which is pretty much everything.
Yeah, right. So for me, the way it was explained to me, and by no fault of anybody except probably mine, I probably didn't even understand what the person was trying to explain to me, because obviously as you keep playing guitar, you realize there's so much you don't know. But what he told me was play minor pentatonic over the 1 and the 5 and play major pentatonic over the 4 chord. So when I first started learning how to solo over blues stuff, anytime the 4 chord would come up, I would go to major pentatonic and then minor pentatonic over the 1 and the 5. Now, there's no hard and fast rule for that. I've never even heard anybody else ever say that before. But I think the point was, his point anyway, was that it just sounded different. You know, when you go to a different chord, instead of just doing the same things over everything, it kind of gave you a fresh sound because over a certain chord, you forced yourself to go somewhere else, even though I didn't really understand that. I think that was his point. So for many years, when I would solo, I would play, you know, minor pentatonic, and then I would go over to major pentatonic, and then go back to minor pentatonic, and so on. And I don't remember how I learned this, really, but I learned how to combine major and minor together, and then realized that that really was, if there was a secret sauce to blues players, at least a lot of the players that I listened to, it was this. Like, this is what everybody did. And so basically what you do is, here, let me get my camera angle to change here. So if you think about it, what we talked about in the last session is how if I wanted to play minor pentatonic in A, I could start at the 5th fret here and play this position, or this box, or whatever you want to call it. And if I wanted major pentatonic, I could shift that down 1, 2, 3 frets and play the exact same shape, but I'm starting on A to give it the A tonality. So if I just played it up and down from A, I get A major. So I have A minor, and again, when I was a kid, minor meant first finger, major meant pinky. So if I wanted A minor, I'd start on A with my first finger. If I wanted A major, I started with A with my pinky. I didn't know anything about theory. Everything that I learned was a visual experience and also an aural experience. Like, I listened to things. I heard the sounds and how major sounded different. Even though I didn't understand my theory, I could tell a major from a minor because of how it sounded.
Right.
So somewhere along the line, I started realizing that in what I just showed you, if I knew, let's just say hypothetically, I knew all of my positions of minor pentatonic. There's 5 of them. I knew them all, and I knew how they all connected together. If I wanted major pentatonic, I would take all of them and shift them down 3 frets. That's how this system I explained to you last time works. So I would just shift everything down. Okay. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't see all 5. I saw maybe the first one, maybe the second one, whatever. But that's really what's happening, is you're just shifting everybody down 2 frets, or 3 frets, excuse me. So if I think about it then, if I was in A major pentatonic playing the first position, so to speak, it would be here. Which means the second position would be here. And again, don't get hung up in first and second position. You might think of something else as second position. Just boxes, if you will, right? So what I started realizing is that that major pentatonic, the second one, because I'm thinking of this as the first one, the second one coexisted in the same place where my first position of minor pentatonic existed. So I had my minor pentatonic here, and I had my major pentatonic second position, so to speak, right here. So they were both existing in that one spot. Plus, I had my A major chord, or A7, or A minor, or whatever it is I'm looking for. I had all of these things sitting in one place. So when I was listening to guys like Eric Clapton, or Jimmy Page, or whoever it was, they wouldn't just play minor and then go major and then back to minor all the time. They would do that. Don't get me wrong. They would absolutely do that. But sometimes what they would do is they would take some notes of the minor and some notes of the major and they would combine them together and get sounds like that. And that was way different for me because my blues didn't sound like that. My blues was minor and then major over the 4 chord generally, and then back to minor again, and that's all I understood. So when I started learning this, it opened up a whole realm of things that was cool. And if you remember in the last one, I was telling you a little bit about the experience I had with Angus Young. Well, Angus would do this all the time. So what I want to do today is just show you kind of what I'm seeing and some simple ideas for you to add into your playing by trying to kind of visualize these. So you're going to have to kind of bear with me here to try and visualize these if this is new for you. But let's just take the first 2 strings, for example. If I was playing A minor pentatonic, I'd play 5 and 8. Those would be my no choices. I could do whatever I want with those. But I'm playing 5, 8, and 5, 8. That'd be minor pentatonic. If I wanted major pentatonic, and again, second position, so I'm in the same spot, I get 5 and 7. And I get that major sound. If I wanted minor, I play 5 and 8, and I get that minor sound. So what I started learning how to do was combine these by playing maybe 2 notes from minor and 2 notes from major. So let's say I played 5, 7 on the second string, and then 5, 8 on the first string. And all of a sudden it sounded more like traditional kind of rock and roll blues that I was used to listening to with the rock stuff that I listened to as a kid. All that kind of stuff. And it's coming from the idea of combining together what I'm visualizing as A major pentatonic and A minor pentatonic. Now, somebody could come along and say, well, I know my theory and what you're actually playing is Dorian. Okay, you could look at it that way, right? Or whatever it is that you might be thinking. You could totally look at it that way. But like I was explaining in the last session that we did, the art of this is learning how to separate them back out. You don't just want to combine everything together just so you have more notes so you can play faster. And again, I'm not dogging speed playing. I love that kind of stuff. But just because you can combine them all together, you can sum everything together, and then you can play them all, doesn't mean you necessarily want to. It's the meticulous parts of picking certain notes to play with other notes that give you the sound. Like, now if you think about it, what I've got sitting here on these two strings is 5-7, 5-7, and 5-8, 5-8, which is 5-7-8. But when I play it like that, I can get some speed licks and things, but it doesn't sound bluesy at all, right? Mm-hmm. But if I do this, if I take 8, 7, and 5 of the first string and do this, it all of a sudden sounds like bluesier. So it's in my phrasing. It's not just in the notes. It's the way I'm combining or playing the things I'm playing. See, right there, I'm playing major pentatonic in my head, minor pentatonic, then I'm going back major, and ending with a minor bend, which kind of pulls it all together.
Yeah, I hear that. Guys, what do you think of that? Pretty cool, huh? So I'm curious how you would take that, Steve. Okay, that's awesome. How do you kind of expand on that? I mean, in terms of like, are you thinking when you're looking at that? I know you're thinking minor pentatonic and major pentatonic, but in the same, it's like but in my brain, I can't get away from this. It's like parallel minor and major. It's both A minor.
I mean, you can
and
put whatever term you want on it, but all I'm doing is visualizing them. Now, to be completely honest with you, my being 49 now and looking at this, I see things very differently than I did 30 years ago. So when I'm referring to what I'm seeing, it's not that I'm not seeing that, but I saw exactly what I'm explaining to you very much when I was 17 and I was learning this stuff. Now I see a host of different things kind of happening in my brain, but they are, again, it's a suspension of what we consider logical theory, because the thing about theory is, especially when you're in college, is that you're forced to define everything. Like everything has a purpose, everything has a meaning. And being from the world that I'm from, sometimes everything doesn't have a meaning, everything has a sound. It's more about a sonic experience than it is that everything needs to be defined in a right or wrong terminology, sort of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So as I'm playing this, there's a lot of ways I could define what it is that I'm actually doing. The way I'm thinking of it in my head to keep things separated is that if I think about playing minor pentatonic, can you hear my guitar okay?
Yeah.
And then playing major pentatonic, I hear the difference in those sounds. Mm-hmm. Even though they're in the same position, I'm visualizing I'm hearing that minor and major difference in the way that I'm playing. When I start combining them together, I'm taking kind of the best of both worlds. And what I teach people how to do, which is what I'm going to show you today, is to kind of learn how to transition between minor and major on each subsequent string. So remember, So you remember you can always go back to just playing major. Or you can always go back to bopping between major and minor. You can always do that anytime you want. But right now we're kind of deeper and we're trying to learn how to put all these notes kind of together without being overwhelmed. So for instance, a pattern that I like to show people is this. If I fourth string minor pentatonic, I'd play 5 to 7. If I was playing major pentatonic, I'd play 4 to 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by playing 4 to 7. Okay? Then when I go to the next string, I'm going to play 5, which is minor, and we can hear that. That note, man, is just total minor. So right there, you hear us making that transition into that minor sound. Well, then I'm going to follow that up with a 6. The 6th fret right here, my middle finger. And the reason is because this note right here is part of the major chord. It's called the major third. It's sitting right there. We can see my my middle finger's down. This is the note that makes it sound major or minor, if you know your bar chords. So I'm putting them both in there. So I'm going from major to minor, back to major. Now just listen to that sound. I go walking after midnight. It kind of reminds me of that. Okay? And then I'm going to tack on the part I just showed you, which is 5 to 7 and 5/8. So I get this. And you get this cool little hybrid of these major and minor twists. Now I might come out of that into something minor, right, to kind of shake things up again, or into major or whatever it might be. So if you could visualize, and I always think like when I was a kid, they had those projection screens where you'd put the little, the see-through paper, whatever that was, and it would go on the wall.
Yeah.
What those things are called, but so if you could put one down and then the teacher would put a second one down and you'd see them together and you go, oh, that's cool, right? So that's really what's happening here is I'm seeing the minor and I'm seeing the major happening at the same time, right? So maybe the minor is black in color and the major is red in color or something like that. So I'm seeing which ones are existing in both, and then I'm seeing which ones exist outside of each one. Like A exists in both. That note is part of both the minor and the major. But it's the other stuff around it. So there's lots of different ways that you can approach playing these. If you see them all, the problem is if you just go, you're going to notice it doesn't sound like blues anymore. It doesn't sound like rock and roll. It begins to sound like adult scales. And it loses its flavor. So it's gone right away. So that's why I'm saying, just because you can combine them all together and play them, and you certainly can, but just because you can doesn't mean you should, because as soon as you do that, you lose that sound that gives you that blues sound by being able to move back and forth between the major and the minor worlds.
Dude, this is so cool. Guys, if you're enjoying this, make sure you hit the old subscribe and notify so you can get notification of the next session. We're also going to be saving all of these on the old YouTubes for you, so on the channel. So you can go back and watch these. Steve's mentioned a couple of times in a previous session. So this is, I don't know which one we're on at this point. But,
I'm not sure either, but
we've done a bunch of these. We're doing a whole series on the Fretboard Workshop. So they'll be available for you there on the YouTube channel. You can go back and watch them. We'll put them in a playlist for you. You can watch the whole thing. Also, I thought of two things. If you want to go really deep into this, guys, we have Steve has a course called the Unlocking the Fretboard Connection. It's available at guitarzoom.com as well as Blues Licks. Because what you're talking about right here, it says we are talking about licks.
Yeah, this is really moving into more of a blues. And again, it's not just because it's blues. It's anything that has a blues sonic
Influence.
sound.
Yeah.
That's, it doesn't matter if it's country, if it's rock, if it's metal. If you're trying to approach it from that blues perspective and give it that bluesy kind of inference, if you will, that's what's happening right here.
Yeah, very cool. Go ahead, my friend. This is endlessly fascinating for me.
Okay, well,
hopefully for you guys too.
Yeah, and this kind of study takes a while to get comfortable with because there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. But what I want you to really think about is as you're playing these things, to think about different ways of moving or different ways of connecting some of these notes together. So, for instance, if I was doing the first, I'll pick on the first two strings again. So I had 5, 7, 5, 7, which was major, and then I had 5, 8, 5, 8, which was the minor. Okay? So, and I showed you how you could play 5, 7, and 5, 8 to get that kind of sound, which sounds really cool. Well, then I started thinking, well, what if I did this? What if I took these two fingers and moved them up one fret? So now I'm playing 5, 8, which is minor, and 5, 9, which is major. But I'm skipping over the 7 in the center. And again, half the battle with guitar playing is learning how to do something that sounds interesting to you and to your listener. And I've always loved the sound of those wider intervals like Eric Johnson and things like that, where they would do these things where they'd skip. They wouldn't play everything. They'd skip over stuff to get different kinds of sounds. So I might be doing a lick where I'm going, you know, I can move back and forth between those ideas. And I mean, there's a million different ways that you can do this once you can see it. Again, you've got to be able to see it. If you're just going off me saying 5, 7, 5, 8, and all you're doing is thinking fret numbers, first of all, you can't play it in any other key, right? And second of all, you're not really seeing how the positions are actually overlapping each other. That's what you have to, that's when you got to shut off the video, shut us off, right? And shut off anything else, any other distraction, and you just sit there and you look at that. And again, like I was talking about in another session, is I would draw these out. I would literally take fretboards, I would draw out 6 lines from my 6 strings, you know, on a horizontal sheet of paper, and then I would draw it out, and then I would take another color and draw out another one, and I would sit and I would look at, in my study halls I used to do this, and I would sit and I would look at what makes them work. And then when I would learn solos by other artists, you know, I mean, there's a million songs we could look at, but one that comes to mind is Hotel California. You see this kind of stuff all over the place in there. You could pick just about any Jimmy Page, any Led Zeppelin solo and see this. So as I would learn songs, I would start being aware of when I would see this happen, and then I would extract that idea. Not the entire solo and all that sort of thing. That's a whole other study, right? Trying to learn a solo note for note and all that sort of thing. That's another practicing thing. I would just go in and try and find whatever was really hitting me, like some lick that from a song or from a solo or something, and I would extract that, and I would sit there and figure out how to implement it into my playing, just one idea. So, and half the stuff I'm showing you right now is probably from somewhere, I just don't remember from where, but, you know, all this stuff is very common in those kind of players, so.
Man, you struck a nerve with me, struck a chord or whatever that hit a nerve, struck a chord, whatever. When you said yeah, whatever I'm trying to say. When you said you would write it out, you know, in your study hall, you'd draw out the fretboard and then, you know, put your dots in your fretboard and then draw out these patterns. Guys, if you've never done that exercise, I would highly recommend it, because you sit and you have the fretboard in front of you, right? And you put your fingers in different patterns, different places in the fretboard. But if you've never taken your fretboard away and just taken a blank sheet of paper and drawn out your actual fretboard, if you've never done this exercise, please go and do this, because you'll be like, I don't know how many frets are on my fretboard. I'm not sure exactly where to put 2 dots instead of 1. And it forces you to think in another way. And then if you take your pencil and you draw out these patterns on the fretboard that you've actually drawn, it like awakens another part of your brain that solidifies this in a way that's different than just practicing it with your fingers. Do you agree, sir?
Yeah, and that's 1 million. Like in my experience, half of my practice is done by thinking. Like if I play in a band in Minneapolis, which is a 4-hour drive from here. Okay, I play in 2 bands in Minneapolis, as a matter of fact. And when I'm driving down there, I will listen to the songs that I'm going to be playing with them and visualize in my head me playing. Now, of course, I'm still concentrating on the road and blah, blah, blah. But I'm practicing when I can't practice. I visualize. Now, again, I'm not saying that everybody has a job or has a situation. Don't get me wrong. When I'm doing these in study halls, it's not like I didn't get my homework done. I got my homework done, right? But if I had extra time, this is something that I would do. And so I often explain to people that practice isn't something that just requires you to go through, you know, you got to be in your practice space and there's got to be 3 candles lit and that light has got to be on and you got to have fresh strings and you just wash. I mean, this whole friggin' ritual thing for 35 minutes to get ready to practice, and then somebody calls and you're, oh crap, I got to leave. And then you don't practice. Like practicing for me was, and it still is throughout the day at any time. It doesn't matter. It's just when can I get what in? Sometimes I have more time to practice technique. Technique is something that most of the time requires your fingers to be on the guitar. Now, there are devices we can buy. You know, I don't know where it is here, but I've got this thing called a shred neck that I take when I travel on airplanes and stuff, and I practice with that when I can't bring my guitar with. it's a little guitar neck that has strings on it. But the point is, there are things like that, but it requires a physical motion of your hands. Memorizing something on your fretboard requires your brain. It doesn't require your fingers. You don't need your guitar in your hands to be able to visualize an A minor pentatonic scale. You do need your fingers on your guitar to practice that A minor pentatonic scale. See, but they're two different practices for me. They're not one and the same. I don't wait till I'm sitting down in my studio to start thinking about anything. I've already thought about it, probably obsessive compulsive the way I am. I probably thought about it about 350 times before I ever sat down.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is once I have sat down, I already know what I'm going to do. I don't have to sit there and go, okay, well, what should I do? I've already thought about what I'm going to do. So
I love it. Yeah, I think, guys, we're not making this stuff up. We know from sports and great athletes and stuff like that, that visualization is an important aspect of being successful really at pretty much anything, but especially when it requires your brain and your body to connect to do something. Like if you're an athlete and you want to visualize yourself making a free throw, it's the same thing as, as playing the pentatonic scale and visualizing in your head how the pentatonic minor and the pentatonic major can be overlapped. And drawing it out is another aspect of learning it, and then actually playing and executing on it. You can't just do one. You should do them all.
Well, and think about it this way, because everybody that's watching this right now knows exactly what I'm talking about in their own station, right? My next door neighbor tinkers on cars all the time. He's always fixing stuff on cars. He can visualize things that I cannot see. I couldn't fix a car engine to save my life. I have no frickin' idea what's going on in a car engine because I've spent my entire life doing this. It's not that I don't wish that I knew what was going on, with whatever he does, but he sees an engine the way I see the fretboard, right? So he's already thought about how he's going to do it because he's very efficient, he's very good at it. And so many of us are able to do that in our regular daily lives, whether it's math, whether it's, God knows one of my best friends is a construction worker. He builds houses, and I wish I had that kind of skill, but I don't. But he does that in his way, right? So if you can translate that thought process to your fretboard, you're halfway there because you probably already know how to do that anyway.
That's a really important part is to be able to practice without having your guitar in your hand. I think that's the point that we're both making here.
Absolutely.
Most people think practicing is the 3 lit candles in the private room with the
well,
you say.
And again, if you are a chop builder, like if you're the kind of person that's really trying to look how to shred and do really crazy things on the fretboard, there's no doubt that there's a physical level of playing that you have to sit with your guitar in your hands. You can think about guitar playing all you want, and you're still not going to develop those abilities. So there are multiple different things that kind of go hand in hand with learning how to play guitar, but learning how to visualize is a really big one.
It's really awesome. Hey, but before we jump back into this, I just want to mention a couple of things, guys. If you're just now joining us, go ahead and hit the old subscribe and notify button so you can be notified of the next fretboard workshop session that we're doing here. All of this stuff is related to Steve's Unlocking the Fretboard Connection course. It's available at guitarzoom.com. It's one of our best-selling courses. Another resource you might consider while you're there would be Blues Licks. That's a new course for Steve. It's also it's all about blues licks, not so much theory stuff, obviously. And the other thing I was just thinking we should mention, Steve, is your music theory masterclass. So if people are sitting there like, yeah, I want to learn all that theory stuff, that's available for you at the Music Theory Masterclass. All those courses and masterclasses are available at guitarzoom.com. So where do we take it from here, my friend?
I think that's good. I think that's enough for now to just get to this next level. And I've got a bunch of other conversations or ideas to talk about, but I think that's enough to kind of get us on this track. So
yeah, I agree. Okay. Sounds good, my friend. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. I'm Dan Denley, and this is my friend Steve Stine, and I really appreciate you guys taking your time to be with us today. It's a blessing and a privilege to be here with you, and this will be available for you on the YouTube channel permanently, as well as the other sessions in the Fretboard Workshop in a playlist there. So make sure you check out the YouTube channel. All right, guys.
Awesome. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.